Hello everyone, DonTheCrown here, and today we are here on the review build for Vessel of Hatred, and we are going to be checking out Mercenaries. Now, Mercenaries are powerful companions that you can bring along with you, and picking the right mercenary is pretty important, not just for making your build more powerful, but there's some small little macro decisions that you can make pretty early on to make it so you can get better gear just for yourself in general quicker. And so right now we're chilling here in the Mercenary Den. This is an area that you're going to discover very early on in the Vessel of Hatred campaign. And if you don't have the Vessel of Hatred, you're not going to be able to deal with mercenaries. So I recommend you go and get that. But you're going to come to this Mercenary Den area here. And only one mercenary is going to be available right off the bat. It's Mr. Rahare, who I think is a really amazing mercenary for you to use. But after you complete the main campaign, you're going to unlock the ability to use all 4 mercenaries after you go and do their corresponding side quest. And completing the side quest of unlocking all 4 mercenaries is part of kind of the endgame bridge between the campaign and true endgame. And you get some nice juicy rewards for doing that at least one time, and I highly recommend doing that for sure. So with your mercenary, you basically get the option of having 2 mercenaries with you if you're playing solo. You get to have a hired mercenary and a reinforcement. Now, if you are playing in a group, you're only going to have your reinforcement with you, and you can have them, everybody in the party can have a reinforcement, but the main mercenary is only active for solo players. Now, the thing about the mercenaries is they have their own little passive tree here, and they have a passive for all of them. Subo's is actually pretty cool because passively he'll just reveal all materials and enemies in the area, and it kind of feels a little bit like you're cheating. You can just see where all of the enemies are. It's pretty great out in the open world because you can especially find things like herbs and mining nodes and stuff like that, which you might need in order to progress your character a little bit. And you can even pick some of the skills that they get. And by picking like either one of these 2 skills, it will change what their basic attack is and give you the ability to progress down this tree. Now, it is important to note that once you pick a side, you can't go back and pick the other side without unspecking this, but it's completely free and easy to switch between the 2 of them. You don't have to farm any sort of resource or pay any sort of resource to respec them. And there are passives that affect either the mercenary or you. So dealing direct damage to an elite, for example, gives me 20% movement speed for 2 seconds. So like going a little faster can be good. And you get to pick basically 2 skills and 2 passives, and then they'll just use whatever skills you selected. Now, if you, for the other mercenary here, the reinforcement one, you only get to pick one of their abilities. As you can see here, I'm using Bastion on Rahare. What this does is it makes him take a protected position for 5 seconds, and he redirects 90% of the incoming damage to allies to him instead. And also you are unstoppable for 1 second if you're within the area when he starts it. And I have this triggered to proc off whenever I become injured, but I could literally set it to any of the skills that are on my bar to whenever I use any skill, injured, or when I become crowd controlled. And so you can really just adjust this to whatever you want. I think that this combination of injured or crowd controlled and Rahere's barrier will be very, very popular, especially for hardcore. But there's some other ways to make sure that this pops off all of the time. Now, this does say this have a 30-second cooldown, but I have literally had 3 Rahares up at the exact same time. So yeah, he's learned how to duplicate himself, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. But talking through the mercenaries here, you might have noticed besides the skills, there's also this rapport tab. Rapport is very important to learn about because basically this is like your reputation or experience bar for your mercenary. And your primary mercenary, if you're running around solo, will be earning 100% kind of rewards in terms of XP, and the secondary one will be earning only half. However, if you're in a party, only your reinforcement will be earning any XP because the primary mercenary won't be there. So if you want to level up someone in particular and you're playing with your friends, you might want to switch your reinforcement around. But the rapport system is very important because not only does it give you the skill points to do stuff for them, but it unlocks bartering. And bartering is basically gambling for obols, but completely on steroids. And so at different breakpoints, level 5 and level 8, for the mercenary, they unlock the ability to barter for different things. So basically, in the center of the room here is Raher's daughter. Little spoiler there. And she can sell a whole bunch of stuff, like boss summoning caches. There's stuff like materials, aspects here. And so you buy these using pale marks, which you earn for doing stuff with mercenaries out. But as you can see, has a whole bunch of boss summoning materials here. And if I do resource cache here, get a whole ton of rings, because only rings and amulets can have resources or resource aspects. So this is a good way to get those valuable rare resource aspects up pretty well. Now, if we look here at the rapport, we can see that at level 5 here, Subo is going to add the utility aspects cache, has a potential showing up here. And then at level 8, we has the option of getting the boss summoning materials. And so it's kind of important that if you're interested in some of these caches, that you go and level up the corresponding mercenary. Now, I did kind of write down what these guys are doing right now. And so we can see that Subo is giving us utility aspects and boss materials. Variana, who is the next mercenary we'll talk about, gives you mobility aspects or masterworking materials. Raher gives you defensive aspects or crafting materials. And then Aldkin gives you resource aspects or prisms, gems, and runes. And so my personal recommendation will be to level up Mr. Aldkin ASAP, because I think resource aspects are extremely rare, and then to pivot off of him to basically Subo and Variana to get these guys leveled up, because utility aspects are also very good to get and really empower a lot of your builds. There's no option for offensive aspect, so that would probably be my number one pick. But boss materials are also really good. She has mobility aspects, which maybe aren't that great, but it's definitely the masterworking cache here that is pretty nice. It's a free way to get some more masterworking materials. And then Raher, I think, is just generally very powerful as a mercenary in the first place, but you're probably not really going to need that super juice until you're like pushing into tier 1, tier 2, maybe tier 3 even later in the game. We'll talk real quick about that. So Subo in general, I don't really think that he is all that great right now outside of his passive. So his passive just allows you to see all of the materials everywhere, and I'll kind of show you here real quick what's going on with that. But it is kind of crazy when you are just like walking around and seeing all of the enemies all over the map, and you're seeing all of the resources. It kind of helps you really appreciate all of the stuff that you probably are missing. Now, right now in the review build, there's kind of an issue. So we can see here where on the map, so we can see all of the resources, and we can see all of the enemies as these little orange dots. And so if I walk over here to this, hey look, there's a resource there. Now you might notice that as I get on my mount, all of the dots disappear. It's because Subo apparently is really lazy and doesn't like to work, once he gets on his mount. And so you kind of have to wait a little bit for it to work again. This is definitely one downside to Subo right now that I'm kind of hoping that they're going to fix, maybe make some sort of adjustment to it. But I think that he, especially if you're looking for resources out in the wild, is pretty good for that. Now, for my personal favorite for active mercenary is actually Variana. Variana has a lot of really good stuff over here. On the left side, she's going to give us up to 10% attack speed. So you get 1% attack speed for 5 seconds. Whenever she damages an enemy, up to 10%. And her abilities do cause enemies to bleed, take damage over time. And this is up all of the time. Now, I just want to note that previously mercenaries said that they could die and you have to like res them up, maybe on the ground sometimes. Mercenaries, at least in the review copy, did not appear to ever take a knee unless you took a knee. And so, this is just going to be up all of the time, giving you another 10% attack speed. The thing I like the most here is Taste of Flesh. So when you or Variana deal direct damage to an enemy which is inflicted with any of her bleed effects, you heal for 1% of your maximum life. Now, that's not really a ton of life here. It says like 1%. It's just 1. I think that tooltip is wrong, but it is just a nice way to heal, especially because I think that this will proc off multiple times off of a single, attack here, like Quill Volley, for example, by throwing out 8 feathers So that's quite a bit of healing that's going up. And her passive here gives you a massacre streak. So as you kill more and more enemies, you get more and more movement speed. And this is just rather nice for just running around all over the place. Now, the next mercenary is, I'm going to talk about, is Raher. As you can see, switching between mercenaries like that was pretty stinking easy. His passive is whenever you be damaged for at least 15% of your current life at once, he comes to your aid to negate the damage. He knocks down close enemies and makes you unstoppable. So basically, if you have any problems, he comes in for you. He give you 15% all res, which is pretty nice, especially if you're going up to like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Resistance is definitely going to be a problem. And he has that Bastion skill, which makes you, take a lot less damage, and you do more damage while you're inside that skill. So I think Raher is very, very nice for defensive playstyle, and I really enjoy making him as my reinforcement. Lastly, Oldkin, I kind of think that he's kind of not all that great. So part of the problem is that if you pick the fire side of the tree, he's going to eat your resources for doing a little bit extra damage. And that can be kind of bad if you're any sort of build that doesn't necessarily have resources 100% and then some completely fixed. And even though some of his fire stuff is pretty cool and having more direct damage, especially the build I'm playing right now, I really need a lot of resource generation. So this actually causes me to lose quite a bit of damage. Now, if I pick the shadow side instead, he'd make all nearby enemies and me vulnerable, and vulnerable causes you to take multiplicatively more damage, which might not seem like that big of a deal, but it's kind of just a scary thing to do. And so unless you're very tanky or don't really care about resources, Oldkin's kind of a little bit trap. However, Wave of Flame is pretty cool here, because this conjures out a Wave of Flames. It has a 25-second cooldown. However, it knocks back enemies, it destroys small missiles, but whenever you cast your ultimate, he can just cast it again. And the build I'm playing right now, we're pretty much spamming the Hunter off cooldown, basically like every 5 seconds or so like that, we can cast another ultimate. So this can pop off quite a bit. Now, one last thing I didn't mention about Ariana here, with her Massacre, just that 20% movement speed really is easy to get going, when you're actually destroying content, but later on it can be somewhat difficult because you need to be killing something every 7 seconds, and so if you're doing harder content, it's a little bit harder to keep up. So typically what I'll do is I'll keep Variana as my primary here, and I hire Raher as my secondary, and I taking advantage of an aspect that we didn't really know about before, which is the aspect of assistance. This makes it so your reinforcement cooldown is reduced by 27%, and after casting your ultimate skill, you call your mercenary for reinforcement. So what this means is if you are able to spam your ultimate, either by having a very short cooldown ultimate, having ultimate that has charges, like the Seeker here has 3 charges, or the Hunter, for example, can reset itself, you're able to very easily just spam out Raher. Now this build also is taking advantage of the fact that we're using Kepaleke, so our basic skills are also core skills, and our core skills are free to cast, so we are just spam casting Quill Volley, so every 3rd consecutive cast reduces the cooldowns of my ultimate by 10%. It's increased by another 2% for each of their skill ranks, where we get 2 skill ranks from above, so it means we have a rank 7 here. So it's losing about 24% of its cooldown every 3 attacks, which means that if I don't get a free reset on the Hunter, I'm pretty much able to just spam out my ultimate just non-stop. And I'll show you an example here. So I'm just gonna pop the ult, and it's on cooldown again, and I didn't kill anything, so nothing's there, but still I'm able to just reset it again. And as you can see here, we're having a Raher party, as we're able to keep multiple Rahers up, and we're taking damage from the Hellfire. And yeah, it's just very, very powerful here. I do think that there maybe be a bug where, sometimes if there's multiple of him up, the damage isn't getting redirected in the correct way. But I think that it is a very powerful option, and just the ability to just spam that out. Also having a 30% reduction on the cooldown of Raher's basically ultimate Bastion skill is just really, really strong. That's 9 seconds off, and this is up for 5 seconds. that's quite a bit of uptime for a very powerful defensive thing. Now, he doesn't move that at all, and so, you know, if you're having to like run through a dungeon, it's not that great. But for boss fights, this can be a real big boon for both you and your allies, because, like, you know, the reinforcement can come in when you're playing in a group, so you have multiple people summoning a hair to kind of keep you guys, you know, healthy and safe. I think this can be a very, very powerful combo. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I am so excited for you guys to be able to hop in and play Vessel of Hatred. It's launching on October 7th or 8th. So I believe it's 7 p.m. on the 7th Eastern time in America. Hope you guys have a good one. See you again soon. Come by the stream.